Welcome in Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Wake up with us each and every weekday morning as we bring you what you need to know to get going on with your day. Of course, here in Illinois, I focus on what's going on at the Illinois State House, where we wrapped up legislative session last month. Actually, it was earlier this month whenever they finally got done. But ultimately, we've got a budget now that's going to start July 1st. But some of the things that are impacting that budget, obviously, we got to keep an eye on, including the cost to the Illinois taxpayer of subsidies for non-citizen health care. So we'll tackle that a little bit this morning, hear what at least one Republican had to say on the House floor before the budget passed about what that could mean if we continue to fund non-citizen health care with tax dollars, how that could impact, for instance, the state's ability to get federal funding for healthcare. So you've got that in the mix. Also, we're going to have to tackle the lack of action on the mass transit bill. That was also brought up earlier this week when the governor signed the budget. He said that ultimately that's not a state budget issue. It's a separate funding stream. So what are some of the advocates for consolidating mass transit having to say? We'll talk a little bit about that as well. Also, we've touched on it just a couple of times, but we haven't really delved into it, and that is the Auditor General's reports on the Firearm Owner Identification Card Act and the Concealed Carry Act as it's being implemented and operated by the Illinois State Police. An audit comes out and shows that they had some problems, so we'll delve into that as well. Again, this is Illinois in Focus Daily. Wake up with us each and every weekday morning, 8 o'clock, as we bring you the latest. You can get the headlines at thecentersquare.com, where you can simply just go to it daily, or you can go and check it out in your inbox. Go to thecentersquare.com/Illinois and sign up for the newsletter. It's a free newsletter for you. We're a free newswire service. You can also donate, as we're a nonprofit focusing on educating the public about what's going on at their state house. So you can get some of the stories there, including Jim Talamonte's story about the millions of dollars that are going to NASCAR as Chicago streets prepare to shut down this week for those races. $5 million of the state budget going to NASCAR. So that's just a little chunk of the budget, a very minute chunk, but some asking questions as to why there has to be tax dollars going to such a thing. So you can read those stories and more, again, at thecentersquare.com. But if you can't wake up with us each and every weekday morning, or if you're coming back later on throughout the day and watching the restream, you can get this via podcast. Just search whatever podcast server you're using, Illinois in Focus, and you'll find it. All right, stay tuned. We will tackle the conversation back and forth about the state's subsidies, taxpayer subsidies for non-citizens in the state of Illinois, and what that could mean for federal funding down the road. This is Illinois in Focus Daily. Governor J.B. Pritzker says Republicans and the Trump administration are wanting to knock people off of health care, but a budget he signed this week does just that by ending the health benefits for immigrant adults program in the state of Illinois. Welcome in. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop, and you can subscribe, join us each and every weekday morning. Pretty lively bunch in the chat room, so if you catch this show afterwards, think about catching it live as we go live to tape here. All right, so let's get into this. The $55.2 billion spending plan is the most expensive state spending plan in Illinois history. Governor Pritzker signing that. It includes tax increases on tobacco taxes, going up 45%, not just for tobacco, but also for vaping products. So you're going to have increased taxes on sports wagering. You're going to have a slew of different corporate tax changes that if you fit into that category, you might have to talk to your tax attorney about how that impacts you, and a whole host of other kinds of new revenue generation and sweeping type things going on in that budget. Again, the largest state budget in state history. But one thing that it doesn't do, it does not continue the health benefits for immigrant adults program. So there's two programs that the state of Illinois implemented over the past 5 to 6 years, and I remember it was the first kind of major policy initiative from like Delia Ramirez when she was a state representative at the State House before she went on to Congress. She wanted to get, during the COVID years, the health benefits for immigrant seniors program in place, and that passed. And then they expanded it a year later to the adults. So it was covering people 42 to 64 and then 65 and up. All right, so those were the two programs. Republicans said that the estimated costs, which were a couple of $1 million, was going to balloon exorbitantly, and they ultimately demanded for audits of these two programs, and an audit came out showing internal reporting errors by auditors who tested some of the cases, showing people who shouldn't have been enrolled in there, and a variety of other internal reporting issues. But it also showed that the state of Illinois taxpayers were ultimately paying $1.6 billion for non-citizen health care over 3 years out of these two programs, with large cost overruns and, again, internal reporting errors to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars more than what was expected to be paid for. So here we are now in the final weeks of the current state budget. July 1st is the beginning of the fiscal year 2026 budget. So the fiscal year for Illinois is July 1st to June 30th the following year. That's the fiscal year 2026 budget. This budget does not include funding for the health benefits for immigrant adults. So that category of non-citizens from 42 to 64. And it cuts that out. And that's after the state had spent around $330 million in the current fiscal year on that immigrant adult health subsidy. Governor J.B. Pritzker asked about why it's not in the budget, and he said Monday, after signing the budgets, that it was an expensive program. But he was asked about, listen, people are saying you're the only person who's removing people from healthcare roles, regardless of the citizenship status. Pritzker has criticized Republicans, saying that the big, beautiful bill that the House passed and the Senate's working on in Congress, Pritzker and other Democrats say Republicans are wanting to take people off of health care roles. But that's what Pritzker just did by signing the budget into effect earlier this week on Monday. Yeah.
I just happened to have been in Minnesota. They also had a program that they eliminated, so we're not the only state. Lots of states have faced the challenge of budgeting and balancing their budgets this year. This was part of the challenge that we had to address. It was a program that had been growing significantly in cost. I do believe that everybody should have health care. I also know that we have to live within our means in the state of Illinois, and particularly because of all the mismanagement that's occurred over so many years. So we've got to rein it in and make sure that we're actually balancing the budget, and that was part of the decision that was made with regard to that program. As you know, we kept the program that's focused on seniors who are the most vulnerable. And it's true that when people don't have health insurance, that they often end up in an emergency room, and that can cost taxpayers more than the coverage that we might otherwise provide. We've got to work out how we're going to cover everybody in the state of Illinois, and that's something that I believe significantly is the job of state government and something that we'll continue to look at.
But again, at what cost? Because again, it was projected it was going to cost several $1 million initially when this first was brought out several years ago. That it was 130, and then it was 400 million, and then it turned out to be major cost overruns, internal reporting errors, and a lack of accountability to where Republicans were demanding there to be more audits of all of this stuff. And we get that audit that shows the cost overruns and the internal reporting errors of both programs, not just the health benefit for immigrant adults program, but also the health benefit for immigrant seniors program. So we're getting rid of HBIA, the adults program. July 1st, program's going to be done. No longer is the state going to spend $330 million on that as they did in the current fiscal year. But the seniors program, the HBIS program, that continues in the new budget with a budgeted amount of $130 million. So that's going to continue on. During the House floor debate on the budget bill, State Representative Bill Howder, he is a medical doctor, an emergency room physician, and a Republican from Morton. He said there's some serious consequences if the state continues on with funding non-citizens who are ineligible for public tax dollars to pay for their health care. Here he is debating back and forth with the bill's sponsor, State Representative Robin Gable, a Democrat from Evansville.
So there's nothing in this budget that funds illegal immigrant health care of those under 65.
Not in our budget, no.
Does the Democrat majority plan on continuing HBIS?
It's in the budget this year, yes.
So you're committed to doing the HBIS program this year, even if there is coming penalties from the federal government, including the FMAP penalties that will trigger Illinois' trigger law that may risk the whole ACA Medicaid expansion program?
From my understanding, anything that decisions that are made at the federal level do not become effective until after this budget year.
The people of Illinois deserve to hear if we are willing to risk the entire ACA expansion program in defense of the HBIS program.
There is no risk to HBIS or our Medicaid program this fiscal year.
To the bill.
To the bill.
This budget is acknowledgement that we were right about HBIA, and we will be about HBIS. The tax and spend Democrats, called tax and spend by their speaker, are so unfamiliar with cost cutting, they call it chaos. They wasted billions, and they are prepared to waste billions more. Wake up, Illinois.
So Howder obviously pointing out that if the state continues to fund non-citizens who are ineligible for public tax dollars to fund health benefits, then the state could very easily lose out on federal funding. And that's something that, for instance, Illinois could see billions of dollars of loss of federal funding. Yeah, it might not come for another year, but if the state continues on, then the consequence could be significant. All right, it's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join us each and every weekday morning as we bring you the latest here in the land of Lincoln. While the Illinois state budget that starts July 1st includes tax increases on cell phones, tobacco, sports betting, bed and breakfasts, and some corporate tax changes, $1 billion of tax increases and other collections that the state's going to rely on for the largest spending plan in state history. One thing that didn't pass that was very controversial was the transit consolidation measure that included $1.5 billion of tax increases for things like remote delivery. You order something from a retailer and it's sent to your house. Well, there would have been a $1.50 surcharge on that. Apparently, that's the vendor had to hide in the receipt. So welcome back. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. We were on the ground at the state capitol watching all of this unfold at the end of May, and ultimately it didn't get past the Senate, but it didn't get brought up in the House before the midnight deadline of May 31st, where the vote threshold changes from a simple majority to a super majority. So it would have taken a super majority to approve the transit consolidation and funding bill out of the House, but it was after midnight by the time they got it, and didn't look like they had that supermajority vote in the House to do this, because there's a lot of concern, right? The transit issue facing some significant hurdles. Earlier this month, you had State Senator Ramvilli Valum and State Senator Sarah Feigenholtz talk about the funding and how they have this fiscal cliff ahead of them, a $770 million fiscal cliff for the transit agencies in the Chicago area. Why? Well, the senators explain why.
The federal government was very helpful in during the pandemic. They provided a significant amount of funding to essentially bolster our public transit system.
Right.
From that time to essentially the end of this year, and it was very helpful. I mean, it's about a 20% on the whole budget that they were able to provide. That's what's running out. That funding is what's running out.
So the COVID dollars are running out. So essentially, it's an admission that the transit agencies were using temporary COVID dollars for regular operational costs. A lot of people, whenever the flood of COVID dollars were approved by the Trump administration and by the Biden administration, they said that the dollars going to public sector institutions, governments, schools, municipalities, state governments, transit agencies, all of the flood of COVID dollars that went out. People said you should use those only for one-time expenses, like paying off some debt. Or doing like, a big infrastructure project that's just a one-time cost. Not this continuation of funding or to make up for funding in a longer-term trajectory. So it looks like the transit agencies did use those COVID funds for regular operational costs, and that money's drying up, leading to this fiscal cliff. More on those funds and some of what they're looking for. Villi Valum and Feigenholtz laying that out.
This transformational investment of $1.5 billion, what does that mean? That means more frequency. That means bus rapid transit. That means creating new service. And for example, the suburbs. Right now, CTA serves 35 suburbs. They have the charge to serve all of the suburban Cook County, right? They just haven't gotten there yet. And so this type of transformational investment can lead to new opportunities.
And what are they talking about investments? It would be tax increase, because again, they're looking at increasing a tax on retail delivery to $1.50 per exchange. Doesn't matter if you're getting a $3,000 TV or a $10 pizza. Opponents say it's a regressive tax. There was also a proposed tax in the bill that passed the Senate that would have levied a tax on EV charging providers and I think some other kind of surcharge that was tied with environmental concerns or something to that effect. What about increased fares? Is that an option here? Villi Valum laying that out in his conversation, trying to support this transit consolidation tax increase bill.
I think that it's also important to acknowledge that while we're looking at adjusting fares, we invest in eliminating transit barriers. So there's in the legislation we reference a fare income capping fare program, right? And so if you're on SNAP, or have other financial needs, having a lower fare. We've also put in the legislation through your advocacy and others. Eliminating transit barriers for survivors of domestic violence, for veterans,
And a variety of other classes of individuals would have limited fare, so it doesn't look like they're having a conversation about increasing fares to pay for that gap. So what happens if no transit consolidation and tax increase bill happens? Billy Valum signaling a warning sign.
If we don't act and make sure this gets across the finish line, as the service boards and RTA have said, there will be a 40% cut to service. There will be more than 3,000 people that will start to get layoff notices, which is just horrific.
So any tax increase, what are they looking at? Obviously, the measure that they passed with the retail delivery fee and the EV charging station stuff, and $1.5 billion in tax increases for mass transit, and that money would be coming from the entire states to go to mass transit districts, so people who don't even ride it would probably have to pay this fee to fund mass transit. Seems to be a big sticking point. But what about other taxes?
I'm open to other funding plans, but it has to be at 1.5 billion. If there isn't one, then we'd like our legislation to move forward and really avoid this fiscal cliff.
So what's going to happen here? When the governor signed the budget Monday, the lack of a transit consolidation and tax increase bill was asked about, and you had House Speaker Emanuel Chris Welch and the Governor J.B. Pritzker respond to the lack of movement in the transit bill, but signaling that, hey, they've got time to get this figured out.
We don't want to continue to talk about this in 5 years and 10 years and 15 years because the system continues to be a failing system. We want to get it right. We want to continue to address what we're hearing from commuters. We want to address ridership concerns. We want to address safety. We want to address management issues. We want to get this right. And so it's important to go slow and get it right rather than fast and get it wrong. Funding doesn't...
Transit or more just enough are you going to come through with the money, because that's going to keep it running or derail it.
Funding doesn't run out to December 31st. We're back in session in October for veto session. We have time. The folks that are in charge of those agencies know that the funding is there to December 31st. They're in charge of being responsible and efficient with the resources they have. We're going to continue to do our part. We have some very hardworking people that's working around this thing, and I believe we'll get it done. And
then the governor is asked about this as well when it comes to the budgeting.
I'm just saying we're committed to addressing the transit issue, and obviously with that, at some point, we're going to have to address the funding issue.
And the governor gets up there as well.
It's not a budget issue. This, I know people like to think of it because there's money involved and it's going to get spent, but actually it's not a state budget issue, the transit issue. It's really a separate matter entirely, even though there will be. I'd also like just to point out that there are a lot of contributors to the solution here. I know there are people who say, well, this is the cliff and here's the amount of money and what is the state going to do to fill that gap? And the answer is not that the state is solely responsible for filling that gap. There are lots of sources, right? The counties where there are residents who are affected, the city of Chicago, Cook County, too, and the riders themselves, as well as the efficiencies that need to be brought to the system. And you have to put all of that together and determine how much money the state should be putting forward. And I think that, I just want to point out that everybody's focusing only on the state when actually there's a whole lot to put together here. So, yeah.
There you go. We're going to see this come back up sooner than later when it comes to how much they're going to increase taxes to and where that tax money is going to come from to fund the mass transit cliff that's going to come at the end of this calendar year as they work to try to consolidate things. How this is going to play out is going to be fascinating. And of course, we'll be on the ground at the October veto session, giving you the latest of what you need to know here with Illinois in Focus Daily. And you can wake up each morning with the headlines in your inbox. Go to thecentersquare.com, sign up for the newsletter, and get those headlines. It's a free newswire service for you. You can also get the podcast where you get podcasts, but don't forget, too, you can wake up with us here each and every weekday morning with the Center Square on YouTube. Illinois State Police did not comply with the requirements of the Firearm Owners Identification Card Act and did not maintain adequate controls over its reporting and monitoring of state property. Those are just a couple of the findings of a recent Illinois Auditor General report released on the Illinois State Police, and we are going to delve into that here. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Wake up with us each and every weekday morning in the live chat, and I am going to post these links into the live chat so that you guys can have these. This one is the general audit, so we're just going to put general audit summary. Boom. I'm also going to put up there the audit over the administration of the Firearm Owners ID Card Act. So, FOID Act audits. You guys will have that in your chat as well, in the live chat. Also, you'll see I've got the Firearm Owners Identification Card and Concealed Carry License Program audit follow-up. So this is the CCL audit. All right, so you guys got those links. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to kind of go through and show you a little bit of the audit reports, the summary, and how you can read these yourself. If you go to Auditor General via Google, you'll be able to find it. auditor.illinois.gov is the website. So we'll pull this up. This is the synopsis of the Illinois Auditor General's report for the 2 years that ended June 30th of 2024. So this only goes up to about 12 months ago, and it's a 2-year audit. So you're actually looking at the 2 fiscal years of 2022 and 2023, all the way up to June 30th of 2024. And you can see here different types of audit findings, right? And the red, I believe, indicates repeat audits. So a lot of different findings, 11 repeats, 11 total, and that's a category 1. Into category 2, they had 14 repeats and 21 total. With some of the indications of what those are. So this, again, is just the synopsis, all right? So we'll find, inadequate controls over state property. The department's populations were not sufficient, even given the population limitations noted above, which hindered the ability of the accountants to conclude whether selected samples were representative of the population as a whole. We performed the audit tests. During testing, they found that $379,133 of missing items reported. You've got fiscal year 23, the discrepancy report of $914,571, which were still included in the department's asset inventory with missing items involved. Over $1 million in the discrepancy reports for 398 missing items. So that's, again, a loss of $2 million of not really knowing where these particular items are. Also some, inability to reconcile different types of reports. Loss of or missing items could contain confidential information. That could be troubling. The department did not have adequate controls over lost or missing property items. Interesting that that's something being found by the Illinois State Police. And on the governor's desk is a bill that would penalize people who don't report lost or stolen items, firearms in particular. You could face some civil and then criminal penalties. Anyways, the department did not have adequate controls over lost or missing property. Noted 37 of 50, 74% of items listed as lost or missing could possibly have confidential information stored in them. The department was unable to identify the types of data stored in those places. So again, you can go through and see a lot of this overview here, right? Items no longer in use remain on property records, even though they're transferred out. Department officials agreed with the audit's findings here. Now they get to the noncompliance with the Firearm Owners Identification Card Act. Some of the headlines: FOID renewal fees deposited into the wrong fund. This is a big issue. During testing of FOID applications, we noted 100% of FOID renewal applications tested, the renewal fees were deposited into the Illinois State Police Revocation Enforcement Fund instead of the Illinois State Police Firearms Services Fund. So the services fund is, what is servicing your Illinois firearm owner identification card or your CCL card, or facilitating firearm transfers that required to go through Illinois State Police, at least reporting of it. Card holders notification. This has been a big issue. Here in Illinois, we're one of 4 states that require firearms owners to have a FOID card in order to not just own and purchase firearms, but also ammunition. But cardholders are not being notified in a timely manner. During testing of expiring FOID cards, we noted 40%, of 40, 5% cardholders, 2 of them were not notified by the department. That's only 40 that they tested. So they went through and grabbed a random sample type thing. Here's 40 cases. They found 2 of them, people weren't notified within the 180 days, some of them 19 days late. So these are findings that have been reported since 2020, they say. They made some recommendations, and the department agreed. They concurred with the recommendations, and the department should ensure timely notifications of FOID card holders and proper deposit of fees in accordance with the Firearm Owner Identification Card Act. All right, so there you go. That's the summary of the Illinois State Police review. But then we get to a just 2-page overview of the Department of State Police's administration of the Firearm Owner Identification Card Act, and we do want to go through this a bit. So it gives a little bit of the follow-up here, talks about the Auditor General releasing a management audit of the State Police's administration of the Firearm Owner Identification Card Act back in 2012. The audit contained 12 recommendations. It's part of the compliance examination of the Illinois State Police Department for the period ending June 30th, 2022. Predecessor auditors followed up with the status of recommendations made in the April 2012 report and reported that 11 recommendations were fully implemented and 1 was partially implemented. As part of the compliance examination of the departments for the period ending of June 30th, 2024, the auditors followed up with the status of the partially implemented recommendation report in the June 30th, 2022 report. Again, they do these audits every 2 years. The current status of the recommendations is shown on the table, so it gives you kind of an idea of what they were looking for, right? So some of the recommendations: guidance over the FOID card program, reporting by the circuit court clerks, reporting by hospitals, information reported NICS by state police, parent guardian information, customer service, out-of-state applicants. You've got management controls over eligibility process, procurement documentation, timeliness of FOID card approval or denial, reporting by state police, and overtime costs incurred by state police. So recommendation 6, the customer service aspect, the Department of State Police, the auditor says, should work with its vendors to ensure that FOID cards are forwarded to the correct mailing addresses and ensure that it has enough customer service representatives to answer the FOID card questions from applicants. So they say that's implemented, and that was one that apparently was not fully taken care of, at least initially. Now let's go to the CCL program and how that's playing out. So it gives some background. In 2021, the Auditor General released an audit of the CCL program. It contained 6 recommendations, and you could see here the 6 recommendations were FOID and CCL application processes. They wanted that cleaned up, application processing timeliness, revoked FOID cards and concealed carry licenses, FOID card enforcement details, appeals, administrative rules updates, and so on. So that several recommendations they had here, they give a little bit of what the Illinois State Police ultimately have done to address these. And again, one recommendation was the Illinois State Police should seek to reduce manual verifications and checks of applicants' information, reduce multiple and overlapping checks, and seek legislative remedies, if necessary, in order to increase the efficiency of the FOID and CCL application process. So it said that during the previous examination, the department started streamlining the FOID card renewal process. The department also sought legislative changes to sync the FOID card and CCL validation dates. FOID card holders who are approved for new or renewed CCL are allowed to have their FOID card automatically renewed for 10 years from the date of approval of the CCL. It goes on throughout some more of the implementation of those recommendations. Recommendation 2 is Illinois State Police should ensure the FOID and CCL applications are approved or denied within the required statutory timeframes. And again, FOID new applications, 17 days roughly, down to 8.79 days. The following year, FOID renewals took about 30 days in 2023. Now they've got that down to like 7 days in 2024. CCL fingerprint applications, you got 52 days down to 45 days. And then the CCL non-fingerprint take close to 80 days in 2023. Now it's taking fewer days in fiscal year 2024 than it took with the fingerprint applications in fiscal year 2023. That's interesting. Again, I know some of the ongoing arguments, at least for the FOID card, are that hey, this is not constitutional. All that's tied up in court right now, so they're still dealing with that in court. The CCL stuff, if you remember, Illinois was the last state in the nation to allow for somebody to get a permit to concealed carry, or the last state in the nation to allow anybody outside the home with a firearm. So they opted for the concealed carry scheme in Illinois. All right, so moving on, revoked FOID cards and concealed carry licenses. This is recommendation 3. Illinois State Police should ensure that sheriffs are notified in revocations as is required by the Firearm Owner Identification Card Act, and continue to work with local law enforcement agencies to ensure revoked FOID cards and concealed carry licenses are returned to the department in accordance with the Firearm Owner ID Card Act and the Concealed Carry Act. During previous examination, the majority of FOID card and CCLs were not returned to the department as required by law. Additionally, the department was unable to provide documentation that the county sheriff was notified as required by law. During the current examination, all 18 that they reviewed of the FOID cards tested, the sheriffs were appropriately provided a copy of written notice of recommendation. So interesting that they seem to have cleaned that up. Recommendation 5, the appeals. Illinois State Police should establish a case management system for tracking appeals and update its administrative rules to reflect the current appeals process. Now, this is interesting because the governor did just sign a law that allows for appeals to have more due process. The advocates of the measure said, but opponents said that it's not really due process to have administrative hearings remove people's rights. You need to actually have a substantive hearing where people can, bring their accuser in front of them and have a trial and an actual conviction type thing. The due process that we are hearing more and more about when it comes to the immigration issues. But what about when it comes to Second Amendment rights for not just U.S. citizens, but Illinois citizens? It's an interesting debate that obviously is played out here in Illinois. It still plays out in the federal courts. But anyways, the Illinois State Police should establish a case management system. They say that, during other examinations, the department did not have a case management system in place to track appeals and could not provide information for the audit period that they were looking to determine these things. So if appeals were being adjudicated in a timely manner, they weren't tracking that. During the examination period, the department was able to keep FOID card application denials and revocation appeals through a case management system with the creation of the FOID card review board, which began processing applications in January of 2023. The department determined it was not fiscally responsible to purchase a robust case management system. Since the board began processing appeals, the department's workload in the appeals process was dramatically reduced. It goes on from there and spells some more stuff out. So you should have those links to those audits in your inbox. Not your in the live chat there. So go check that out, read up on those, and if you're interested in other audits, go to auditor.illinois.gov. So auditor.illinois.gov, and they did just release some audits yesterday of the Department of Juvenile Justice. You've got the comptroller having a audit, the General Assembly, House of Representatives, and Senate's compliance audit. You've got another comptroller audit, Supreme Court, including appellate courts, the state employee retirement system, the compliance examination, and the census data for how many people are involved in that. So you've got some other audits there. And if you're interested too, and again, audit reports, you got to really spend some time with it. And it's not everybody's reading, but some of you wonks out there might actually enjoy it. But you can see the audit reports, state agencies, and you can click on that, listed alphabetically. If you want to look at the most recent audits about pensions, for instance, you can find all that here. The General Assembly, how much is that costing taxpayers? So have some fun with that, and we'll obviously be delving into future audits as we get them. All right, it's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Wake up with us each and every weekday morning as we bring you the latest here in the land of Lincoln. But you can get the newsletter in your inbox. Just go to thecentersquare.com and sign up today. That's all I got for you today on this Wednesday. We do have a news conference that some State House Republicans are going to be holding later on this morning, talking about what they say are constitutional violations. So it's going to be a continuation of the challenge of how they came about with the state budget, violating a 3 readings rule. How's that going to play out? Plus, you've got the Chicago City Council set to meet today with Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson holding a news conference. So we may have to unpack that tomorrow here with Illinois in Focus Daily. Again, join us each and every weekday morning as we go live, and you can join that live chat. A bunch of lively conversations going on there. And shout out to the regulars who are in there every morning with their coffee. Appreciate that. But don't forget to get the newsletter and the podcast for Illinois in Focus Daily. Have yourself a great day, and we'll see you back here tomorrow for a Thursday edition with the Center Square.
So